Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's Synastry is between Rihanna and Chris Brown. Now before I get started in this, I just want to say if you need a compatibility chart between you and your significant other, my email is in the description box. So I'm going to get started on this. Now he has Mars in Cancer, and that's not your typical warrior because it's a man who fights when he feels cornered emotionally and he can be moody. So he doesn't necessarily go looking for a fight, but when he feels insecure, when he feels like his manhood is being questioned in a way, he snaps and then he feels disempowered or defenseless and doesn't know how else to react or to hold his own ground. Now picture Chiron fused to his Mars, and that means wounded masculinity. Also, the asteroid Ishtar is there, holding hands with Mars and Chiron. And this is where it gets volcanic, because Ishtar is the goddess of war and passionate sex. So this can set his Mars on fire. Ishtar will poke and push him and poke him to reclaim his power through action and even through aggression. So if he feels disempowered, when Ishtar's energy merges with his wounded Mars, it creates not only a volatility, but it creates someone who doesn't just want to reclaim his power. He wants to burn the whole room down to prove that he has his manhood, if that makes sense. And then Ishtar is there holding hands with Attila. And Attila the Hun, now this asteroid, this has to do with aggression, and this can erupt into like a nuclear war. Does he get into fights a lot? Because this is really a cluster of flaming sort of buried fire that can suddenly erupt, like I said, because of Ishtar in the background, poking and prodding him. And then, like I said, Ishtar's holding hands with Attila, and Attila the Hun there in the background going, come on, let's start this room on fire. So that's the energies. And also his Attila is conjuncting Rihanna's IC. And so this has to do with aggressive behavior behind the scenes towards her because it sits at the bottom of the chart and it's conjuncting her IC. Now his sun opposes his Pluto, and that plays out like a tug of war between his identity and some undercurrent of control. So this says, I want to be seen and I want to be powerful. And this is classic for the iron fist aspect. It's the energies of is my way or the highway. Now his moon is opposing his Pluto, and this means emotions run deep and his emotions run deep and are very intense, but they're often tangled in power struggles and control issues. So in this synastry, you have two live wires, the plug and the socket, or Rihanna and Chris Brown. So if put the plug into the socket and you see what happens. You can either get like a huge floodlight or a fuse is blown. But in this case, there's arcing sparks because his Mars opposes his Uranus, and that's classic for all of a sudden a huge blow up. And her Mars is conjuncting her Uranus. So now we have another live wire here that can also erupt into volatility. Also, her Haas and Uranus and Saturn conjuncts his vertex. And the vertex is a very important point in a synastry chart. It's a fated point, and whatever conjuncts your vertex from the other person, you will receive those energies in a very strong way. So Haas and Uranus, it shook up his world. Haas has to do with anger and sudden volatility, anger issues, and on the extreme side, hatred, and then there's sudden explosions possible here and unpredictability with Uranus conjuncting his vertex, and this was brought right into the relationship, shaking up his foundation with rebellious intensity, and all of that was hidden behind the cold exterior of Saturn. And then it all of a sudden can erupt without expectation. It just suddenly comes out in the open. Now, her Astarte, goddess of war, conjuncts his ascendant, and that brought a fiery, warlike energy. Astarte is also linked to Ishtar. So there's this, like I said, it brought a fiery, warlike energy to this relationship, and it's stirring up conflict and power struggles. Now, her Apophis conjuncts his midheaven. And that's like a grenade being thrown into his public persona, into his career. His reputation will end up in tatters. His career will be on the back burner. And it just the way the chart plays out. I'm not playing the blame game here, but this is just cosmic chemistry and the way the chart played out. So when these energies collide, Apophis, like I said, has to do with destruction. Chaos is just inevitable. And her sun and Iphigenia conjuncts his north node. So this shaped the theme of the relationship, because I've said before, whatever conjuncts your north node from the other person, that's going to end up being the basic theme of the relationship for you. And in this case, Iphigenia has to do with victimization, betrayal, and sacrifice. And with her sun there, it's going to shine a spotlight on all of these energies. It's going to shine a spotlight on the victimization and the betrayal. And he won't be able to escape what happened. And it's always going to be there between the two of them. The sun is shining the spotlight on all of these energies. And because of her Apophis conjuncting his midheaven and the way his career kind of, I don't know if it was destroyed, but it didn't go back to the way it used to be. And with her sun conjuncting Iphigenia, this means the sun has to do with the father. So there's this possibility that she didn't have a good relationship with her father. Maybe there was victimization involved or betrayal by her father. So I just thought that I would bring that up. Now, his Mars, I forgot to mention, his Mars also opposes her Uranus, and that's a classic explosive trigger aspect. This means, like I said before, there's outbursts, volatility, and volcanic eruptions. So this is just a very messy synastry. It does not whisper sweet nothings at all in each other's ear, because his Mars is also opposing her Mars. So now we have double trouble. Two warriors facing off to each other. Neither one of them wants to give in. They both want control. They want to lead, and neither one wants to back down. This could be actually really passionate for chemistry, but they're also fighting for dominance. And with all those other aspects, the Mars and Uranus, it adds fuel to the fire. Now, his Neptune squares her Venus, and that brings fantasy, idealization, and eventual disillusionment, because she also has a Venus square Neptune in her natal chart. But in the beginning of this relationship, she may have felt adored or romanticized at first, but over time, the lines and the energy gets blurred and fogged up because of Neptune. So it creates a love fog. There's deception, unmet expectations, or the feeling of getting let down and not seeing the other person for what they really are. So what looked like a dream in the beginning turned into a huge disappointment, and the illusions got cracked when reality set in. So like I said before, Rihanna's Venus squares her Neptune, and this makes her a romantic idealist. A romantic idealist at heart. someone who wants a love that feels otherworldly and poetic. But this aspect, like I said, it can blur boundaries. This aspect creates rose-colored glasses, and what she sees in love is not exactly what is going to transpire. There's a deep vulnerability here, and we have the kind of love that she sees love blindly in a way, even when the red flags are waving right in front of her. And it's just, like I said, Neptune is it creates a situation where you're not seeing the other person for what they really are. Now, when all of this illusion broke, so did the connection. So it really wasn't love. It was more like a projection wrapped in chaos. Now, Rihanna's Jupiter in Aries conjuncts Chris's Lucifer and Finale, and this supercharged his arrogance and know-it-all attitude, because that is the energies associated with Lucifer. With the asteroid Finale here, that has to do with the asteroid of endings, and this energy gets magnified because of her Jupiter in Aries, and there's fire here involved, and his pride exploded while triggering a dramatic, unavoidable breakdown because of Finale. And also, to exacerbate this, his Mercury conjuncts her Typhoon. So over time, he became the storm. His words were like a destructive, overwhelming force, unleashing eruptions and typhoon-like rage when he spoke. So that's another aspect here that just adds more validation to the rest of the chart. So it wasn't just communication, it was like a verbal eruption. So this was basically a synastry of violent and volcanic emotional triggers. And also her Icarus. That asteroid has to do with rash and impulsive behavior and gambles that don't pay off. And her Icarus is conjuncting his descendant. So she brought that into the relationship. But he did as well, because his Icarus conjuncts her North Node. So the theme of this relationship was, for her, rash, like I said, impulsive behaviors, coupled with all of the aggression, because that's very strong here, multiple times in their synastry chart. And the gamble with him did not pay off. So that's all I have between these two, and I will be back soon with other synastry charts. So please like, share, and subscribe to support my channel. Have a nice day.